How does the DA see this actually unfolding? Do you see a scenario where we're actually able to pull off the arrest of the president of a superpower like Russia?
Well, yes. I mean,
you're watching SA Trending Updates. Please consider subscribing and hit that bell notification.
We now know what the president thinks about this ICC arrest warrant and how the state should respond. He's concerned about possible war. Is that a concern you share?
No, we think it's bizarre, to say the least, that the president will latch onto obviously a political statement by President Putin that whoever would try to arrest him would be seen to be declaring war on the state of Russia. But I think the critical point is that, of course, if one looks into the exchange of affidavits now in this specific case, the president also does not answer to the quite simple solution we've put on the table in respect of the possible conundrum, and that is that, of course, President Putin can be informed that because of our international and domestic obligations to give effect to the warrant of arrest, he should rather refrain from attending. And the fact that President Ramaphosa would rather say, I would expose South Africa to a war if I would arrest, rather than in a friendly manner advising President Putin not to come, says a lot about the way the ANC still sees their relationship with President Putin and Russia in light of the Rome Statute and the obligation to arrest.
Yeah. I mean, advising Putin is one thing. Whether he takes that advice is another, right? There's been a lot said about how he would look if he was to be seen cowering away from arriving at this BRICS summit, especially if he intended to do so initially.
Yes, of course. I mean, if a friendly advice is not listened to, then, of course, the option is also to cancel the invitation. I see President Ramaphosa in his affidavits says that would be a diplomatic faux pas. It would be discourteous in terms of diplomatic protocol. But of course, you can never say that that good diplomacy can override your international and domestic obligations, and that must be made very clear to President Putin in our view. Of course, there is some movement if one listens to what the Russian delegates to the BRICS political party summit has said. Is they've already said that, yes, President Putin, for him to travel is not easy. There's a lot of technicalities, etc., etc. So it's quite clear that there may still be in the background some movement that ultimately would result in the hopefully the inevitable, and that is that President Putin must be made to understand that should he want to arrive in South Africa, we are under an obligation to arrest him.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, he's dealing with a fair amount domestically. I mean, there's that recent overt challenge to his rule by the Wagner mercenaries group that took place. He's also leading a war in Ukraine. So he's got a lot of reasons why he shouldn't arrive. But hypothetically speaking, if he does touch down at, I think it would be Waterkloof Air Force Base, how does the DA see this actually unfolding? Do you see a scenario where we're actually able to pull off the arrest of the president of a superpower like Russia?
Well, yes. I mean, there's a lot of practicalities involved, Ayanda, but it also, that question is closely linked to our own sovereignty, the way we see the rule of law in South Africa, as well as the way we see ourselves as an international actor. So the long and the short is, it must be made clear to President Putin that if he was to insist on arriving and attending the BRICS summit, we are committed to give effect to our international obligations. And that must not only be words. The necessary arrangement should then be put in place to give effect to that. It should not only be a warning which we never intend to give effect to. And that is precisely for that reason that we will be in court on Friday again, and that is to get a court order to make it very clear that our government, in terms of the Rome Statute and the warrant of arrest forwarded to us by the International Criminal Court, will be under that obligation.
Yeah. I suppose for a lot of people, there's a bit of a challenge in reconciling that obligations and what practically can actually happen. I don't know, if the court does give out that order, right, that there is that obligation that is on South Africa's part, I'm still struggling to kind of piece together how that would even look like, trying to even get close to Vladimir Putin for that arrest. And I'm sure, sincerely speaking, Varna, this is something the DA is also wrestling with, right? That if the situation were to eventually get there, practically speaking, if we weren't really keen on pulling this off with an Omar al-Bashir, on what grounds at all would we even attempt with Vladimir Putin?
Well, as you just you used the word keen, and then I think therein lies the answer. It is all about the will of this government to embrace even those obligations it personally is uncomfortable with, because that's their constitutional obligation. So I understand that many South Africans, you included, might have a lingering doubt as to whether this will ever happen. Ultimately, that doubt is a reflection on the way this government is approaching the rule of law and our obligations in terms of the Rome Statute. So that is as simple as it is. It's an either-or situation. Either President Putin must be made to understand that he is, if he is to set foot here, we will be embracing and giving effect to our obligation to arrest. Or if we keep on pussyfooting around the issue, of course, he will feel that ultimately we will be assisting him in the same way we assisted Omar al-Bashir.
Are you as a party, though, concerned about any kind of diplomatic fallout in the wake of this? Even if Vladimir Putin eventually takes this advice and doesn't arrive in the country, it's few people think that would be the end of it.
Well, the interesting part is, of course, that if there's diplomatic fallout, and specifically then within the BRICS regime, it will be of our own making. Some of our own BRICS partners have played a much more nuanced game in being truly unaligned, whilst also tapping into some economical benefits that the war has brought about them. Whilst we have been saying that we unaligned, we're not choosing sides, but in the same vein we have been undermining our own interests. So a further fallout in terms of diplomatic relations will also only be the consequence of the fact that we've never given true effect to our stated stance of being unaligned in this war.
Yeah. Another possible way out is, of course, South Africa not hosting the summit. I don't know how likely that is, given the fact that we're less than a month till it actually begins. But would that exit plan be one the DA supports, or are you more interested in the principle, quite frankly, which is that of South Africa essentially adhering to its international law obligations?
Well, yes, of course. If the president of Russia is insisting to attend in person, then one of the options would be to move the summit. So that would be a solution in terms of the conundrum around the warrant of arrest. As a party, we say that, of course, BRICS can bring some benefit to South Africa, and in that sense, we don't want to be seen as a party that's in favor of the cancellation of the summit. So if it could be moved at this late stage, it would be a solution. Of course, the more obvious solution in terms of logistical arrangements and any inconveniences to all of the other attending parties would be, at this stage, for the president of Russia to accept that he is, in terms of our international obligations, not welcome to visit us in person.